thank you for joining the What's New informational session on Tableau. We'll be starting here in just in about a minute, and the session will be recorded. Hi there, thank you for joining the Tableau What's New informational session. It is now 2 o'clock, so with us today we have Dwight Taylor, who will be doing the presentation for today's session. If there's any questions, by all means, feel free to ask throughout the session, and just so everyone is aware, we are recording this for future use. Thank you, and Dwight, it's all you.
Thanks a lot, Lourdes. Thanks, everyone, for joining. We're going to go through some of the features of Tableau Desktop 10 today. So first off, I want to thank you all for taking time out of what I'm sure is a busy schedule and for participating in today's session. As Lourdes mentioned, if you have questions, by all means use the chat window or maybe just unmute yourself and ask your question. Jump right in. Feel free to interrupt me. It's totally fine. We're not going to go through every one of the new features for Tableau Desktop 10. We will go through some of the more popular features and long-awaited features. And so if there's something that we did not demonstrate that you're interested in, we'd love to know that as well. I would like to mention that for the past couple of weeks, let me first introduce myself, as I think I did. Dwight Taylor, the Tableau Solutions Architect, and I was really brought into JLL to look at the Tableau environment and really prepare it for global use. And so we've been doing that for maybe 3 months now. And recently, a couple of weeks ago, we updated the Tableau test server from Tableau 9.3.4 to Tableau Server 10.02. And over the weekend of November 11th through the 14th, I think, we'll be upgrading the production server from Tableau 9.3 to Tableau Server 10.02, or actually we're considering 10.1. So soon after this presentation, a couple weeks after this presentation, you'll have Tableau 10 server available for you to use with Tableau Desktop 10. So it's rather timely that you participate in this. All right, let's get started. I think the first feature we're going to dive into today is the device preview feature. This is a long-awaited feature of Tableau Server, and this particular feature allows you, the Tableau designer, to actually include in your Tableau workbook what's known as a device layout. And a device layout basically is a view of your Tableau dashboard specifically designed for a device, whether that be a tablet, whether that be handheld, or any type of device that your customers may be viewing your content on. And so we're going to go through that feature. One of the things that or one of the changes, significant changes that Tableau made with Tableau 10 is the actual side pane when you're on a dashboard. And we can tell that I'm looking at a dashboard because dashboards have the icon and worksheets do not have the icon next to them. They have the window pane icon. And when you're on a dashboard in Tableau 9, what you're familiar with is something that looks sort of like this screen, the Layout tab. But there's a new tab called Dashboard. And all of the features that were available to you in Tableau 9 are still there, but they just look a little different. And one of the newer things is this device preview button. And when you click that button and you're on a dashboard, what happens is a new row opens up or appears, and it's the device preview row. And what this row allows you to do is navigate through different types of devices and Tableau will present to you how your dashboard will look on those devices. So for example, right now I'm in the default view, which we can see here the size is 1020 by 625, and if I use the navigation arrows to rotate through the different type of devices, if I go to a full desktop, which is 1920 by 1080, we can see how our dashboard looks. And one of the things Tableau does, which is extremely helpful, is it gives you this black border. So I'm going to go back to demonstrate this. We can see now that there's no dark border around this dashboard, and when I navigate to the next device layout setting of desktop, there's a black border. And if we scroll and navigate down, we can see that that black border goes all the way around the screen to represent the viewing area for that particular device layout. If we go to tablet, we can see that how our dashboard would look on a tablet that has dimension 1024 by 768. And so with the outline, you can actually see what your content will look like, and with the sizes, you actually can choose different types of tablets. So this is a generic tablet. If I navigate to the next option, I get an iPad tablet that's in landscape mode, and you can actually rotate it, right? We can switch from landscape to portrait and then back again for this particular device layout, which is extremely helpful for viewing your dashboard. That's not the most compelling part of this new feature, and so now we're looking at a cell phone, and we can look at our dashboard as the cell phone rotates. The most compelling feature is the ability to actually add different layouts and cause them to look differently on different devices. So as you can see here, if we actually did not provide an additional layout for this dashboard, our dashboard would flow off of the side of the phone, which is marked by this dark border, and the user would have to scroll horizontally in order to see all of our content. In order to add a device layout to your Tableau workbook, you simply choose the layout that you want, and so we can navigate to different types of phones that are pre-built into the tool, and once you have a phone layout that you're interested in, you simply click the Add Phone Layout button. When you click that button, I want you to take note of this area of the screen. Once you click that button, you can see now that we have the default view, and then we have a phone view, and the border sort of changes. It changes from that dark solid border to actually a light gray border with some handles. And so now, with this preview selected, we can actually change the way our dashboard flows on this particular device. And so I'm going to choose a built-in content arrangement, which I'm going to choose Fit All, and then you can see how our dashboard looks once it fits on the device, the entire device. Now, quite frankly, that's not too appealing, so I'm going to make some changes to the sizing objects or to the layout objects. So I have a blank object here, I have a blank object here, and a blank object here. The first thing I'm going to do is edit the width of these items. I'm going to change it to 25 instead of 125. Change that one to 25. And now my middle content looks a little better, but it's still sort of trailing off. I can't see all of the content. So with that, I'm going to actually pull this item down so that it takes the minimum amount of space, and I'm going to pull this item up so that it takes the minimum amount of space. And now we can see on our phone layout, all of our content is visible, and you know, the user has a good experience when they access our dashboard with their device, which is the overall intent of Device Preview feature, the new feature. In addition to this, you know, we may actually want to provide some additional elements if a viewer is looking at our dashboard with a particular device. So in this instance, we're using a phone. If I drag, So I have some dashboard layout objects here. I'm going to take an image. I'm going to put an image here, and I'll just choose one of these pictures. And we'll say fit the image and like that, and I'll remove that object. So now we have a layout for our dashboard that will include some additional content when a user accesses our dashboard with this particular type of device, a phone that has these dimensions, 375 by 667. And once again, we can rotate this and see how our dashboard looks when it's rotated as well. And it looks pretty good, right? At least it's spaced out correctly, and the user can see all of the content without having to scroll. Now, once you do that, when you publish to Tableau Server, which I'll do now, let's make sure I'm in the right site. I'm going to change my site to a different site. All right, and we'll publish this dashboard up to Tableau Server. One thing I want to note before I publish, when you use device layouts or you have various device layouts, the content, this is a text object. You can see here that it's a text object, but if I double-click it, I can't actually change the content of this text object from the layout. If you want to change the content of your dashboard, you actually need to be on default view. So in default view, I can double-click this text object and actually change the letters, and I can add something in there. Once again, you cannot change the content, and we can see the comma that I added there. You can't change content from a device layout, but you can from the default view. Okay? All right, so let's publish this to Tableau Server and then take a look and see how device layouts actually respond using the web browser. I'm going to publish this content up to Tableau Server, and we'll call it Tableau 10 Device Layout or Device Preview. And I think we'll publish it to Dwight's Stuff. We'll publish it to that project. All right, so let's go ahead and publish that view, and we'll hop into Tableau Server and see what that looks like. Dwight's Stuff, make sure our publish is finished, and it's done. Let's go back to content. Right, so there's our new dashboard that we published. And if we look at it, I think we're on the device preview screen. We can see how it looks normally. So this is the default view. And then I'm using Google Chrome, so I'm going to use a feature of Google Chrome that allows me to simulate cell phone devices. So now I'm simulating a Galaxy S5, which has some dimensions that are relatively close to our device layout. But as you can see, Tableau Server did not by default change this, and that's only because the way device layouts work is that when you first request Tableau content, your device actually sends information to the Tableau Server so that Tableau Server can make a decision before it renders content. Now with the Google Chrome feature that I'm using, there's not content sent to Tableau Server. So all we need to do to figure out if our dashboard is actually displaying content the way we expect it to is just refresh this page while we're simulating a cell phone device. And then once we do that, we can see exactly what Tableau will do. It has a circle instead of our regular mouse pointer to indicate that we're simulating a mobile device. And if we click, if we had some interaction in this dashboard, it would actually respond the way it normally does for a cell phone. And one thing to note, you'll notice that the toolbar has moved from the top of the dashboard to the bottom of the dashboard. And so that makes it very handy to have menus and things available for us to interact with this viz and do things like share it, refresh the viz, refresh the data, and so we can see that Tableau actually responds correctly when we access our dashboard via a device. Okay, so that's dashboard layouts. if there aren't any additional questions, we'll move to the next feature. One thing I want to note, you can have multiple layouts. So if I wanted to have a tablet layout and I wanted to add this layout, you can see now that I have two layouts. I have one for a cell phone and one for a tablet. And this tablet, the default layout starts with it in landscape mode instead of portrait. And I can also rotate it, and, you know, we can see how it looks in both modes, landscape and portrait. And since that's pretty good, I think I'll save that, right? The last thing I'll mention about device layouts is you can actually customize the content, as we've mentioned, or we did that for our phone layout. The one thing that you cannot do is add additional worksheets to a dashboard. So, you know, when you're doing device layouts for specific devices, you want to make sure that the worksheets that you want to be available to the user is on the dashboard before you begin to make the layouts. You can rearrange the worksheets, you just can't add new worksheets, okay? All right, and once again, that's because the default view is the only one that can be edited. The layout views, you can actually arrange content. So what are some of the benefits of device layout? Number one, optimize customer experience, right? For those accessing your dashboards, you want them to have the best experience possible regardless of the device, and as long as you have an idea of the range of devices that could potentially be used to access your content, you can deliver that fine-tuned customer experience. And I will tell you that this feature has, you know, I've been wanting it for at least 4 years at this point, because it's really important to be able to do that. And I'll give you one additional example of ways you can use device layouts. I don't know if how many are on the call have ever done a live Tableau presentation with an interactive visualization, but I can tell you this, when you connect to a projector and then your dashboard gets squished and doesn't look right in the presentation, it doesn't go over well, right? And so you can use device layout to actually simulate the dimensions of a projector if you know what the projector dimensions are. So you can prepare for presentations. That gives you predictable presentations. And then using device layouts actually helps fine-tune and hone your how to maximize the layout that you have. So if you're using a cell phone, you know, you can build dashboards that are optimal for that limited amount of screen real estate. Okay? All right, so the next feature we're going to cover is clustering. Clustering is one of the new analytic features of Tableau, quite popular with analysts and those really reviewing data models and, you know, trying to find the signal in the noise of data. And there are a couple of things to think about when we talk about clustering. When you cluster information, basically what Tableau does is create some groupings from the data marks that are on a visualization and puts them together, right? So it tries to cluster data marks that have some similar characteristics to their neighbors or to data marks that are in the vicinity. And when you do that, you can actually take the clustering result set or the set of clusters that Tableau created, and we'll see this in a second, and actually create a new dimension from that that can actually be used in other visualizations. And so we'll talk about that. And there are some scenarios that I have listed here where you cannot use a clustering result set in additional visualizations. And one of them is if you are not Tableau by default aggregates data, but you have the capability to turn aggregation off. And if you have disaggregated data, you can use a cluster, but you can't use the cluster as a dimension of its own to use in a separate visualization. When the cluster that you're using is on the filter shelf of a visualization, that prevents you from using it as a dimension or as a categorical divider for a different visualization. And then when measure names or measure values are in the view, you can't use a clustering object as a dimension. And finally, if the view that you created uses a data blend and there is a dimension in the view with that data blend, you will not be able to use clustering as a dimensional element in a separate visualization. All right, with that said, let's jump into clustering and take a look. So what I have here is I'm using the orders sample superstore data set that comes built in with Tableau Desktop, and I have some small multiples. So it's basically a scatter plot of sales versus profit, and my small multiples are divided by category on the x-axis and region on the y-axis. And what I'm going to do now is navigate away from the data pane, which is the pane that you're probably most familiar with, and navigate over to the analytics pane. This pane is basically where you find your analytic functions. And so I'm going to take the new clustering feature and just drop it on this clustering element that appears once you click on clustering. So I'm going to do that again. Once I hold down my left mouse key or mouse button and I begin to drag the clustering item, that drop area appears automatically. And then I just drop clustering on there, and we can see that Tableau automatically creates a set of clusters for me. And right now, Tableau determined, based on the data that I'm using, that 3 clusters is an appropriate amount by default. And so the algorithm used to determine that we won't get into, but there is some logic used to do that. However, the number of clusters that are created, you can change it. And so you can see in the window that appears here, there is an opportunity for me to determine how many clusters Tableau creates. And so if I add a 4 and I press Enter, then Tableau adds an additional cluster element, right? And since I have a couple of, I can see from this data I have a couple of outliers, that may make a little bit more sense because these outliers are far away from the rest of the data marks. You also have the ability to change the way the cluster is generated, right? So right now, the cluster is generated on the sum of profit and the sum of sales, but we can actually generate clusters on any one of these functions, right? The average, median, count, and so on for any of the measures that are in the view where you're generating a cluster. And so the next thing I want to mention is what we mentioned on the previous slide, which was, then taking that cluster and using it as a dimension in a separate view. And so I have a cluster element here. I'm going to just drag it into my data pane, and let's see, as you can see, it created a new object here. Now, what this is actually technically referred to in Tableau, from Tableau's perspective, is a cluster group. And I don't know how many on the call are familiar with Tableau, but Tableau has a concept of grouping, like grouping dimension members together into a larger group. And so the icon here, which is the paperclip, sort of on a slant, is the icon that represents a Tableau group, and the cluster naming convention lets you know that this group is the result of a cluster that Tableau created. And so if I create a new worksheet, I can then, let's look at, we'll look at sales by order date. We'll double click, we'll drag sales up there. We'll make that a bar. And so now I have a nice little bar chart, and I can actually take my group. What I'm going to do is take my cluster group and drop it on color to separate these bars by my cluster grouping. And sometimes, depending on how large the cluster is and what it does, it'll take Tableau a second to actually use the cluster in a separate view. But nevertheless, you have the ability to actually take that cluster and use it in different visualizations. So now, instead of just a single bar chart, I have a stacked bar chart, and you can see that we now can interact with our individual clusters. And so we can see how the sales have been performing by the cluster member. Okay? All right, so that is clustering in Tableau. very unique feature, very nice feature, should be familiar to those who have done data modeling and true data analytics before, but it's really simple, and you can see how easy it is to actually leverage the clustering feature. Okay? Now we'll talk about a feature that's known as the highlighter. Now, highlighting is actually not new to Tableau. I'll show all the cards here, and so, there's a little pencil icon whenever you have a legend, and as long as there's that pencil icon is turned on, you can highlight different elements, as you can see me doing here, right? So if I click on the specific color, and I intentionally created this view for those of you who like gumballs, because that's what it looks like to me, a bunch of different color gumballs. All right, so that's highlighting itself. But the new feature in Tableau 10 is actually called the highlighter, not highlighting. And so in order to activate the highlighter, you simply click a dimension or a discrete measure. You could use either one, and simply say show highlighter. And I'm going to do it for product name, and I'm going to do it for category. And so for category, if I click in here, I can see I have 3 different categories. But what if I have a long list and I don't know the name? I can actually just start typing. So I'm going to type UR. And if you notice, I know there's a sort of a delay since we're viewing WebEx, but as I type, the highlighting feature changes. So when I'm on U, I'm now highlighting furniture and office supplies among all of these dots or gumballs. And as I begin to add more letters, the clustering changes, right? Well, we can do that for category, and since we have a long list of product names, we can also do that for products. So if I type table, you can see how Tableau, each time I type a letter, the highlighting changes, right? And if I go back and I type mini, you can see how the highlighter finds our values. And let's find out what this one is. So this one is image. It has the word image in it. So when I use image, you can see how Tableau highlights that. In addition, you can have compound highlighting. And so right now, you can see I have image highlighted, but my category is all technology. So if I type UR, I'm getting a different highlight sequence. And so you can actually combine highlighters as well. It's a very neat feature if you have a view that's dense, or when I say dense, I mean it has a lot of data marks, and you really want to sort of tease out what's important in the view, depending on what's important for you. And so if you have that dimension in your view, you can use the highlighter to actually help you narrow down areas of interest for a view. Okay, that's the highlighter feature. The next thing we're going to talk about is actually bar charts. If you've worked for Tableau for any amount of time, you're familiar with bar charts. They've been around since very early in Tableau's life cycle, or the life cycle of the product. But there's a new feature that has been added which adds width, or the size of the bar. And so with a view like this, the height of the bar communicates one aspect of this data visualization. The color of the bar represents a total different aspect of our data, right? So height represents sales. Color is represented by total profits for those sales. And then we can actually add a third dimension. And that dimension is the width of the bar. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take discount and just drag it, left-click, drag it, and drop it onto size. Now we actually have a data visualization that is communicating insight for these measures, 3 measures, sales, profit, and discount, in one data visualization. So basically, in Tableau, the more information you can communicate simply in one visualization, the better off you are, because it's comprehensive and it gives your users the ability to really understand some depth and context of the data visualization or the chart that they're looking at. Okay, and that's how you navigate the new bar chart feature, or that's how you execute it in your data visualizations and add an additional dimension of insight. Okay. The next feature we're going to talk about is cross-database joins. Now, this is another one of those long-awaited features in Tableau, cross-database joins. And basically, I'll describe what a cross-database join, what that term means. It basically means you are creating one data source in Tableau that actually connects multiple data sources that live in different places. And so I'll give an example. JLL has a lot of SQL Server databases that it uses to house data, and it also has something known as the data lake, which is Hadoop. Okay, Hadoop is, a different type of source, and so you can actually create connections and, more importantly, joins between data sources that live in different places. And that data is then brought back into a Tableau environment. If you're working with Tableau Desktop, that's Tableau Desktop. If you're working with Tableau Server, that's Tableau Server, and allows you to actually join the data as opposed to what has already been available in Tableau, which is known as a data blend. And the main difference between data blends and cross-database data joins is that in the data blend, your data is aggregated and summarized before the join occurs. When you do a data join or a cross-database data join, your data is actually joined before the summarization takes place. And this is significant if you're marrying data. I don't know, we'll give an example. Let's say we have an HR system that has salaries, and then we have sales in a totally different system, right, where sales actually is in, I don't know, maybe Salesforce.com. And what you want to do is create a visualization to demonstrate how people are moving along their goals or something of that nature. Okay, so you have goals in one system and sales in a totally different system. So I'll demonstrate this. I have a connection here to the sample Superstore sales Excel document, and what I'm going to do is actually create another connection. And you do that in Tableau by using the Add link in the Data Preview pane, which is, this is the Data Preview window. If I click Add, then I get the Add Data Connection window open. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to connect to a Tableau extract that I've created already on my computer, see if we can find one that's useful. Yeah, here's one right here. Now, this says Sample Superstore, and this one says Orders Sample Superstore. Now, they're both orders, and so, I'm doing this as an example so that we don't have to take a lot of time in doing this, and so my data joins work. But the concept applies to all of the data sources that Tableau supports, basically. And so what you can see here now is I have my Sample Superstore data source, which is Excel, and my Orders data source, which is a Tableau data extract. Now, they're the same thing, of course, but, I think the concept is pretty clear. One of the things I do want to mention about this is that when you do cross-database joins, Tableau, in its effort to sort of make the software fall into the background and simplify and speed up the ability of the analyst to begin to see and understand their data, Tableau begins to make decisions about data. And as you can see here, Tableau has made a decision to join our data on category. And the way Tableau makes this decision is that it analyzes the metadata from both data sources, or better term or a more simpler term for metadata is the field names in both data sources, and it tries to find something in common. And if it finds a field name that is the same in both data sources, capitalization included, it automatically chooses a join relationship on that field. But of course, you can change that, right? And so we have order ID, and so I want to actually join my data on order ID. So I'm going to choose order ID from the left table and order ID from the right table, and you can see that Tableau sort of, gives some indication that you're pulling data from a different data source. In the drop-down when you actually choose your fields. And then once you have your join in place, you are ready to start querying data. And so Tableau's going to automatically refresh itself, and if you'll notice, I'm actually using a live connection. And so this is also something that I wanted to make note of. When you do cross-database joins, you can use live connections, but at the end of the day, if you think about it, what you're really trying to accomplish with a cross-database join is you want to create a brand new data set, which is a hybrid of data from one system and data from another system. So you might want to actually think about extracts. And so, I'll choose an extract here, and we'll go ahead and jump right in after Tableau refreshes itself. Now, in this example, I only have each data source. I know what they have. They have maybe 10,000 rows of data as an estimate. But if you're doing cross-database joins and you know you have hundreds of millions of rows of data and you're working in Tableau Desktop, I would kindly recommend that you sort of limit the data for a number of reasons, and I'll give you some of them here. Number one, it can cripple your laptop querying that much data on a laptop computer that doesn't have the computing resources necessary for data sets that large. In addition, it can lock up your computer and take a lot of time in order for you to get that done. And usually in order to see and understand data, you would want that for your final dashboards, but you don't necessarily need it for dashboards when you're, trying to understand and sort of find the signal in the noise of the data that you're looking at, or find the insights, right? Identify the insights. You usually don't need that much data. And so if you're using cross-database joins and you're working on desktop and you're exploring the feature, I would recommend that you use a very small or limited data set. And Tableau, when you're connecting to data sources, it allows you to take a sample in a number of different ways. And so that's a feature that Tableau offers. And so you can see the cross-database join is working here, and it's going to produce my data set. And then once it does, I have a brand new data set as a Tableau extract, which I specified here. And then I go off and just start building my visualizations. That allows, and so I have a brand new data source here. And if we take a look, we can see some indications. Now, remember, I joined two data sources that were exactly the same. But nevertheless, if I create a new worksheet, I can see my data sources here and my fields are duplicated because of what I did, but you can see that one has an extract note on it, right? So you can tell the difference between the data sources where the data came from. And when you truly use different data sources, and maybe you pull in a table from Oracle and a table from SQL Server, Tableau will automatically group those under the table name itself, okay? All right, so that's the cross-database join feature. Now we're going to talk about cross-data source filtering. Now I want to make a distinction between cross-database joins, which is joining data, and cross-data source filters. Cross-data source filters don't actually join data from different data sources. What they allow you to do on one dashboard, and if you create a dashboard that has data sources from one data source, so you create a worksheet from one data source A, and then you create a worksheet from data source B, and you add them to the same dashboard, which is what we're going to do here. Let me just add a new connection. Let's add a new connection back to our order sample superstore so we can demonstrate the cross data source filtering. Go back to sheet 9. So now I have 3 data sources, and you can see I have one that says extract, which is my Tableau extract data source, and one that says new extract. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create sales. I'm going to look at a sales by region, and we'll color that by region, and then I'll create a new worksheet that's actually profit by category and region, okay? And we'll color that first by category, and then within category, we'll color it by region. Okay, so we have some shades here. So within a category, each region has a different color. Okay, so I have 2 worksheets, and actually, let's switch this data source so we can demonstrate. No, I want extract. There we go. Okay, so I have 2 worksheets, and they each, so this worksheet uses the extract data source, and sheet 9, okay, let's undo that. I actually had them using 2. Okay, so sheet 10 uses the new extract, and sheet 9, all right, so let's take that off. Let's demonstrate this right. So we want sales by region, and we'll color by region. Okay, there we go. So sheet 9 uses our extract data source, and sheet 11, and sheet 10 uses our new extract data source. So what we're going to do is take sheet 11 and sheet 10 and put them on their own dashboard. Sheet 11 and sheet 10, okay? And I'm going to actually show region here as a filter. And so this new feature is called cross data source filtering. And basically what it allows us to do, there's a new item in the list that's been added. And in Tableau 9, you had the option to apply a filter to all using this data source, and you had the ability to select, individual worksheets for a filter to apply to. The new feature is use this filter for all related data sources. Now, Dwight, good question. How does it determine that data sources are related? It's the same way Tableau anticipates joins between data sources. It looks at the field names and determines whether both data sources have a field titled region. If it does, when you begin to use that, you can see that both of my worksheets that have 2 different data sources, they are now being filtered by one filter. And I'll basically speak about the significance of this. Prior to this, whenever I built dashboards for clients and I needed to filter across data sources, here's what we would have to do. We'd have to create a parameter of the filter. The downside to that is that parameters are always static. They're not data bound, which means that when you add new data and there's new elements that should be added to the filter, you have to manually update the parameter. Once you did that, then you had to create a calculated field based on the value in the parameter. Once you did that, then you had to create an additional calculation that filtered data based on what the user chose in the parameter. So I guess my point is it was an extremely manual process to get this level of functionality, whereby with one selection from a context menu, we have this functionality in seconds, right? And it's not complex. Okay? All right. The next feature we want to talk about is workbook formatting. So this is also something that has long been awaited for Tableau users. Workbook formatting, and let's give an example of what I mean by that. I'm going to change this color palette to Seattle Grays. All right, and now I have a dashboard with Seattle Grays. My cross data source filtering still works. By the way, this would not be a good dashboard to actually publish. It's horrible looking, but it's going to demonstrate the point. With previous versions of Tableau, let's say you have 10 dashboards, and I have 2 dashboards here. And you have 10 dashboards, and you want to actually change the font of all of the dashboards to a common font. In previous versions of Tableau, you couldn't do that. It wasn't possible to do that. You'd have to go to each individual dashboard. But now, with the new version of Tableau, you have the ability to actually change the formatting of the dashboard. And you can set them to templates, and you can actually use some of the different templates that Tableau has, and you can actually change your formatting. And so we'll choose a worksheet here, and you see where it says copy formatting? You can actually copy the formatting of this worksheet right here, go over to this worksheet, and paste the formatting. Now, what Tableau does, it won't change the color schemes, but it definitely changes the text, the fonts, the colors, and the way the dashboard actually looks from its Chrome features. Let's go back a couple steps. So you actually have the ability to actually paste formatting, which was definitely not possible in previous versions of Tableau. And what it does is cut down the amount of work that you have to do when you want your dashboards to actually conform to a specific standard. Okay? Yeah, I think that covers that feature. Okay? Now we're going to move to Tableau Server if there are any questions. I do want to take a stop and take an opportunity to find out if anyone has questions. You can also use the chat window. My friend Lourdes is helping, so if you want to pop in questions there, that would be okay as well. So the feature we're going to cover today on Tableau Server is extract failures. I don't know how many of you are actually actively using Tableau Server, but one of the features of Tableau Server is the ability to schedule an extract to run. And when you schedule an extract to run, there's the possibility that sometimes your extracts may not run successfully. In previous versions of Tableau Server, you could not, or when your extract that you scheduled to run at a set time and date, if it failed, the only way you would know is when you logged into your site in Tableau Server, there would be sort of an icon here and a number next to it. And you'd have to open it up and look at the error in order to note that your extract failed. Well, now there's the ability to actually receive an email as soon as your extract fails. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take an extract that I purposely added to the Tableau Server that cannot be refreshed, and I'm going to do what any rational Tableau Solutions developer would do, and I'm going to refresh this extract that cannot be refreshed to demonstrate our example. Let's see, refresh extracts, and I'm going to do a full refresh on this extract. Now, as you can see, let me cancel this for a second. This extract is actually pointing to an Excel document that was on my desktop. And so the reason it's going to fail is because the same Excel document doesn't live on Tableau Server where I'm actually doing the refresh. And so when I do my refresh, we'll do a full refresh, and we'll take a look at the background task for extracts for this refresh and see its status. And we can see that the extract failed. And the reason is that unable to connect to the file, see blah, 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 Dwight Taylor sample-superstore.xls, which we expected. What we're looking for is an email to that effect. And so let's refresh our folder and see how soon Tableau is going to give us an email of our failure. Now, this feature, I will comment, is critical and important if you're scheduling refreshes, because you don't want to walk into a presentation one day, think your data is refreshed, and you just didn't know that, Tableau Server failed to update your extract. But by the same token, there are situations where you might want to not receive extract refresh notices. Let's say you had a job change, right, and the emails are still being sent to you. From Tableau Server, without actually contacting a Tableau Server admin, I'll show you how to disable those notifications. Once you log into Tableau Server, your common name will be in the upper right-hand corner. If you click that, you'll see something that's entitled My Account Settings. Once you go to My Account Settings, you can actually disable email extract failure notifications in this section, the bottom section of the screen that you see me circling here. If you clear that check mark, fair notice, this will disable notifications for all extracts. If you actually want to disable them for individual extracts, Tableau hasn't provided that level of customization yet. Hopefully it'll be coming in future versions, but today this will disable refresh extract failure notices for all extracts. Okay? Let's take a look at our email. Did I get it yet? Doesn't look like I got it yet, or maybe I'm in the right folder. All right, well, there's an email that's sent. Let's see if I can really show you what it looks like. Let's see, no. Yeah, there. No, that's not one. I think this may be one. Nope, that's not one either. Okay. I thought I had an email of an example, so I can show you the example and show you how to unsubscribe from that example. See if I can find one here. Oh, that's not one. I think this may be one. There we go. All right. So here's an example of an email that you would receive. I must say that since I've been working with Tableau for a long time, their notification emails usually are quite, let's just say, bland. And this one is a little bit more fashionable from an email perspective. You get your logo. You get a notice that lets you know something happened, right? It's not favorable because of the word. Tells you what site the extract occurred on, which can be really useful because, once you receive an email like this, your next step is really going to be to navigate to the site and try to find out what occurred. Gives you a warning. This warning is quite important, so I'm going to highlight it here. And this warning is letting you know that with this notice, as of 5 consecutive failures, that means, let's say I schedule my extract to run every night at midnight, and for 5 consecutive days it fails and sends me an email. What this line is letting you know is that if your extract fails 5 times in a row, it's going to disable the schedule. Now, that doesn't mean it's going to disable the email notification. It means the very schedule that you set up for that extract is going to be automatically disabled. And this is sort of a way of Tableau Server sort of maintaining integrity with the resource usage on Tableau Server, right? So if your extract keeps failing, it doesn't make any sense to keep giving, Tableau Server memory, CPU, and hard disk space or allocation to your extract, knowing that it's not succeeding at what it intends to do. So after 5 failures, Tableau Server will disable automatic schedules until you go in and fix it. And then you have some details about the error. This says unknown failure, and so most of the error messages for a failing extract won't be as benign as this or as ambiguous as this. The error, if a data server or a database returns an error to Tableau Server, the error will be included here. Gives you the name of the data source. So you can identify that, tells you when the failure happened, and, some light suggestions. you can also use this button to actually jump to the data source on the website where the data source lives. And then at the bottom, there are a couple of links. Number one, the person who the email went to tells you why you're receiving the email, that you signed up for notifications. And by the way, Tableau uses an opt-out model, which means that by default, everyone receives notifications if notifications are turned on. This is a feature that can be disabled at the server level. It could also be disabled at the site level. So for those of you that are site administrators, you can disable this feature. And that will disable it for the entire site, by the way. Okay? And then there's the unsubscribe button. And so when you click unsubscribe, it takes you to that same My Account Settings screen that I mentioned before, where you can uncheck the notification feature. Okay, that is a very high-level debriefing on some new features in Tableau 10. Hopefully they serve you well, especially cross-database joins and cross-data source filtering. Those are really important, and notifications are even important for those of you who have published data sources. I will open it up for questions now. We are recording this session, so after the session, we'll download the MP4 and put it in a place where it's easy to share, and so you'll have an opportunity to review the content that was shared over time at your convenience. Okay?
So, Dwight, there's a question in the chat. It says, in highlighter, can you select multiple value?
Oh, yes, absolutely. So let's go back to our highlighter screen. And so using the control key, actually, let's see what type of, wow, that's a good question. It doesn't seem like it. And let's talk about the purpose of a highlighter and the difference between a highlighter and a filter. So I'm going to do product name and I'll do show filter. Okay? Now, with filters, you have the possibility of selecting multiple values from a drop-down, right? And so what you can do there is, check the values that are important to you, as you can see me doing here. The highlighter, and so let me answer the question first. No, you can't highlight multiple values at the same time. But what you can do, which is the intent of the highlighter, is to give you quick, ready access to areas of interest on a dense visualization, or a visualization where you just want some quick insight. And so I'll choose this chart, and we'll do a highlighter on, let's say, category. All right, so if I wanted to quickly identify a category, really simple for me to do that. And if we actually set a highlighter for region, I don't want to filter the data. I want to be able to see all the data, but I actually want to call to the forefront specific areas of the data. So if I just want to look at central, this is the ideal use, or one of the ideal use cases for the highlighter. Okay? It's not intended to be an actual filter. And if you'll notice, it also highlights my legend. So my legend is corresponding with what I'm actually seeing in the data visualization. Okay, so the answer to that question is no. Great question. Thank you for holding my feet to the fire on that one. Appreciate it.
I see no other questions in the chat.
Okay, great. Thanks, Lourdes. Okay, so those are Tableau 10 features. There's one additional feature that I will just mention. We're not going to try to demonstrate for the sake of the video. Lourdes, would you mind maybe stopping the recording now?
Sure.
Now let's stop the recording.